Next up, getting the public to act and vote on climate. We have David Fenton, chairman of Fenton Communications. I wanted to especially thank David. He makes campaigns for environment, public health, and human rights. Inspired me and my friend Allison Wolf to found Frack Free Colorado. So thank you so much.
Greetings, everybody. Is everybody awake? You sure? Okay. Can we maybe have the people that want to talk go outside and talk? Thank you very much. Can we put up the photo, please, of Shanghai? So we have a problem that we haven't really fully acknowledged, which is climate change, the most urgent issue facing humanity, is not viewed as urgent by most of our fellow citizens, and this is true around the world. It's particularly true in our country. Now, I was just in China and took this picture of Shanghai on not a bad air pollution day. It looks pretty bad, but by their standards, it's not. And as you can see, Shanghai is a very vulnerable coastal city. It is laced with waterways everywhere, a city of 24 million people. So I did a little anecdotal experiment in Shanghai, and I tried to find one person who knew that within this century, Shanghai would be underwater if we don't change course quickly. And I could not find one person who had ever heard that. Now, this is matched by the polling research around the world. In China, only 18% of the people there believe that climate change is a serious issue, according to the latest Pew survey. And in the United States, only 15% of Americans believe that climate change is an urgent issue. And by the way, only half of Americans believe humans are changing the climate. 70% believe the climate is changing, but only half think that it's us. Now, when Gallup takes a survey in this country every year, they ask people, what are the most important issues facing the country? And climate change appears on the answer list consistently every year, 19th out of 20th. Jobs, health, family, security. So obviously we have not succeeded in showing our fellow citizens that this incredibly urgent issue, where we're on the cusp of all these horrible tipping points that are irreversible, is going to affect their jobs, their security, their prosperity, their health. We have not made the case. The facts show us that we have not. So this is a big problem for us, because this is part of why Trump and Pruitt and Tillerson, I call them the oily three, are ignoring us and ignoring this issue and feel that they can trample on it with impunity, because they see the polls, they see that people are not aroused about this. So we cannot expect the change that we want to see, or even to accelerate market transformation, which is also affected by public knowledge and public opinion, if we do not more specifically and purposely set about raising public knowledge and concern about this issue. And if we don't do it soon, I guarantee you, when the next president takes office, no matter how much they want to do on this issue, if we have not created a more propitious public opinion environment, they will not be able to do everything that they want and everything that is necessary in the very short time period humanity has left, which is really just the next few years. Now, why are we in this situation? It's a very interesting question. The most urgent issue humanity has ever faced is not viewed as urgent. I mean, this is a very Shakespearean drama. The human civilization is in dire threat, and people don't know. Amazing. So there's a bunch of reasons for this. One of them, of course, is that climate change is not an easy issue to communicate, and to communicate simply. And only simple communication works. People think this is far away. You know, when people speak about it, they talk about it affecting future generations. So it is intrinsically difficult. But a big part of the issue is that we really don't communicate with the public about it in any consistent scientific way. You know, our great NGOs, they're great at a lot of things. They're great at law, and we sure need their lawsuits now. They're great at science. They're great at policy. Some are very good at grassroots work, but few, only a few, are good at communications. And while there's hundreds of millions of dollars being spent in the climate movement every year and in climate philanthropy, only a tiny, tiny amount is spent on communicating this issue to the public. Less than 1% of the budgets of most of these groups. Now, this is interesting because all this investment that is going into what I call the supply of policy. Well, okay, we don't lack a supply of policy. We have lots of ideas about what to do. We lack demand for policy change, and we are not investing in this enough. And we need, in my opinion, to create a project that does that, that creates urgency using all the modern communications techniques of repetition, of using simple messages, of scientific marketing, of guaranteeing that our messages are reaching target audiences repetitively, like you do when you sell a product or a service. We need more great spokespeople, and we need to give them more of a platform. We have to do much more online than we're doing. But this is not happening anywhere near the scale that is necessary. Now, we have another problem, which is the television media in our country does not cover climate change. In fact, it now covers it less than it ever did. So in 2016, according to Media Matters, there was a total of 50 minutes devoted to covering climate change among 4 major networks. On the Sunday shows, where all the politicians speak, 11 minutes total among 4 networks. I think that works out to about 10 seconds a week or something like that. So we're being ignored. Now, part of why the media ignores this is they also see the polls that people don't know enough about this or care enough about it. So we also need to do something to pressure the media, or we're never going to succeed. There's a lot we could do to pressure them, but we have no consistent project aimed at doing that. Now, we have another big problem, which is the partisan divide over this issue in our country. We now have some terrific conservatives and Republicans and libertarians on climate change. They're great. They can debate the science and explain it better than a lot of people. But there is no project to consistently raise their visibility so that they are speaking to their own colleagues in a visible way. And if we were to do that, we would lower the partisan temperature on this issue. But if people are speaking in obscurity without a large platform, they will not have the impact that we need them to have. Now, we have tried at Fenton with certain partners to address some of this. We've succeeded with some pieces of it that are useful mostly as models for what can be done. Because the thing about communications projects is that the only thing that works is ensuring a massive amount of repetition in a similar period of time. Only massive amounts of repetition sink into people's consciousness. People only learn from repetition. Politicians also only pay attention to things that keep coming at them. The agenda, the zeitgeist of a society is created by repetitions of simple messages. Make America great again. We don't do this. We could. Now, we ran a series of ads, on the editorial pages of the Wall Street Journal last June with a client, the Partnership for Responsible Growth. We ran 12 ads. It was the first time, really, that the truth about climate change had ever been on the editorial pages of the Wall Street Journal. And it's had some impact. They're running op-eds admitting that humans are changing the climate, which they never used to do. Now, we have another situation in Washington, D.C., where all the ads that policymakers, media people, people at think tanks, lobbyists are exposed to are fossil fuel ads. Washington, D.C. is inundated with fossil fuel propaganda television. If you watch TV in Washington, you would think that fossil fuels are the greatest things that ever happened to America. They're going to make us rich and energy independent and jobs and endless prosperity, even beautiful women. And you will never, almost never, see, if you watch TV in Washington, if you're in a congressional office and CNN is turned on, the consequences of using that. So imagine the impact in that perceptual environment of essentially our invisibility. Now, the thing about Washington, D.C. is that it's cheap to buy television ads there because it's a small market. You know, we can't compete, we can't afford to compete with the fossil fuel industry's brainwashing at a national level, at a mass level. But we can in Washington, where you can buy television ads on CNN and Fox News for under $1,000. That's right, not $100,000, $1,000. So we have been making ads with the Partnership for Responsible Growth to start trying to counter some of this fossil fuel dominance in the most important city in the world for our issue. And I'm going to show you some now. The first ad I'd like to show is the dentist ad. Can we show that?
If 97% of all dentists told you a tooth couldn't be saved, you'd pull that tooth. If 97% of all engineers told you your house was unstable, you'd move. And if 97% of all airline workers told you not to get on a plane, you wouldn't. So, when 97% of the world's climate science experts tell you our planet is warming and we're responsible, why would you ignore them? When you're 97% certain, you're certain. Protect America from climate change.
Thank you. Now, the research on this issue is very clear. With any population, when you sit down and explain to them that 97% or more of climate scientists say humans are causing this and it's a terrible threat to us, support for action goes up 20 points immediately with all populations. And yet, where is our project to make sure that message reaches people? We don't have any such project. We get bored with ourselves. You know, we've said it once and we think that's enough. That's just ridiculous. So it's essential that we get that message out there, and not surprisingly, because the strategy of our enemies on this issue has precisely been to spread doubt and confusion about whether scientists agree. And you can see the latest version of this with Scott Pruitt, who's very slick, in case you haven't noticed, at confusing people on purpose. He's very slick. And he says, he has an updated version of this. Well, yes, it's true humans are contributing to climate change, but we really have no idea how much, so we need further study. In other words, spreading more confusion and doubt. We have no doubt how much humans are contributing to climate change. 100% of current warming is coming from humans. The planetary orbit we are in right now should be cooling the planet, but we're overwhelming it. This is well known, and Scott Pruitt knows it too. But spreading doubt and confusion is their strategy. Where's our antidote? Okay, the next ad I want to show you is about what's going to happen to Florida. Can we show the art class ad, please? A softer approach. You know, don't you love the morality of these people? Well, you know, we can't really say how long it's going to take for Florida to be underwater, so we should keep studying it. Like, it really matters from a moral point of view if it's 30 years from now or 100 years from now, right? Incredible. All right, so this is, you know, you can't hit people over the head with climate change issues because their nervous system shuts down. It's too awful to fully contemplate. You have to do it in an artful way, and you also have to, as much as possible, combine the message of what we face with solutions to avoid that also. So this is an approach to showing people the impact of flooding. Would you run the fishing ad, please? Thank you. Now, those of us used to doing things on very cheap guerrilla budgets know that sometimes we have to do things that are controversial in order to get attention and communicate a message. Would you show the fetus ad, please?
The rising temperatures from climate change will bring many more mosquitoes. And that means more diseases like West Nile and Zika virus threaten us. And our unborn children.
Now, these ads have been running in Washington, D.C. The buy is about $50,000 a week. That buys you about 50 or 60 times on Fox News, on CNN, and we're running them on Morning Joe and MSNBC. Prices on Morning Joe have escalated a bit because everybody knows Trump watches it. So there's competition. You may have noticed the news stories where people on the White House staff purposely put stuff on television because they find that's the only way to get to the president. I submit we should be on television more. And the Partnership for Responsible Growth is actively seeking more support to keep this going through the end of the year so that we don't have only fossil fuel dominance over perception in Washington, D.C. So I'm running out of time. And I do want to say that the kind of project that I believe is needed in the United States really would cost a fraction of what is being spent on all this policy supply. And I really hope that people will come together to make it happen. We've never really had a systematic, scientific, modern marketing and communications program to change public opinion on climate change, to raise that number of the only 17, 18% of our citizens who think that this is urgent. We can raise that number if we set out to do it consciously. If we don't create a project to do it, we won't. There is no current project to do this. There's a lot of great disparate efforts. They need to come together into a very focused project. And in closing, I want to quote Abraham Lincoln. And Lincoln said, "Public sentiment is everything. With public sentiment, nothing can fail. Without it, nothing can succeed. Consequently, he who molds public sentiment goes deeper than he who enacts statutes or pronounces decisions. He makes statutes and decisions possible or impossible." Thank you very much.